Chapter 6, 132. Coexistence of Pain and Joy. Translator. Chibi General Editor. Chibi General. He Lu Lan poured incessant grievances in his heart. He had outstanding battle strength along with an extremely powerful strength. Path long-range killer move. It was just that they were not enough to cover his weakness in the movement aspect. More accurately speaking, He Lu Lan cultivated strength in dark path which were not impressive in movement ability. But in the present situation, only flying masters could barely survive. He Lu Lan's weakness was thus completely revealed under the pursuit of the Formless Hands. The Formless Hands wantonly seized the goo worms in He Lu Lan's body. He had destroyed many Formless Hands and chased after many, but at the same time, new Formless Hands would appear to grab even more of his goo worms. Right now, He Lu Lan was flying fiercely like a berserk bear. His expression was one of malevolence and anger. He knew Fang Yuan had big advantage in this situation, but he could not give up. The reason was that the goo worm Fang Yuan had captured was, very unfortunately, He Lu Lan's vital goo. The vital goo was closely interlinked to the goo master's life. Once it was destroyed, the goo master would immediately suffer heavy injuries. By grabbing this goo, it was akin to Fang Yuan controlling a huge weakness of He Lu Lan. Mentioning this vital goo, it had gone through many difficulties as well, being seized by the Formless Hands many times while He Lu Lan seized it back again. Counting the number of times, this was already the 6th time this vital goo had been seized. Only this time, an accident happened. It landed in Fang Yuan's hand. His vital goo was with the enemy. This was a very serious situation, and it needed to be retrieved. Fang Yuan's eyes shone with a cold light. He did not know the rank 5 goo in his hand was He Lu Lan's vital goo, but he could tell the huge importance of this goo from He Lu Lan's behavior. You want to take back this goo? Keep on dreaming. Fang Yuan moved the 6 wings on his back and rose up, flying far away. He Lu Lan had hunted down Fang Yuan again and again before. The hatred between them was already very deep. But this moment was not a good time to kill He Lu Lan. There were more and more Formless Hands. Fang Yuan was already feeling difficulty in dodging them. If he fought under this situation, he would surely have to pay an extremely disastrous price, even if he succeeded. It was more so when He Lu Lan had great strength, true martial physique. If he was forced into a corner and self-detonated, Fang Yuan would have to suffer the terrible consequences. Let's see how long he can continue chasing me. Fang Yuan snorted and forcibly suppressed the restless goo worm in his hand. Soon he shook off He Lu Lan. While dodging the Formless Hands on the way, he sent a portion of his consciousness into his immortal aperture. The immortal aperture was growing without stop. Ever since Fang Yuan exited Tai Bai Yunsheng's immortal aperture, his immortal aperture had been continuously absorbing heaven and earth qi. Now it was already over 2,600 square kilometers. The sky was orange and yellow, while the earth was rugged with steep white stone mountain ranges that stood tall and lofty. The terrain of the immortal aperture was related to the goo master's paths, accumulation, temperament, and comprehension. This was the first time Fang Yuan became a strength path goo immortal, and he only roughly understood it now, only knowing the general situation. If he wanted to have a deeper understanding, he needed to research in the future. The time flow has reached 1:12 ratio. 1 day in the outside world is 12 days inside the immortal aperture. The growth rate is gradually slowing down, Fang Yuan assessed. By now, he had almost absorbed all the heaven and earth qi in true inheritance secluded domain. He was now waiting for the immortal aperture to stabilize completely, which was the most important. Once he possessed a goo immortal's battle strength, everything would change. I will let you hold on to my goo for the moment. I will get it back no matter what. He Lu Lan could only roar helplessly as he looked at Fang Yuan fly further and further away. He was obstructed by the Formless Hands when he chased and had lost many goo worms. It was already very difficult for him to evade the Formless Hands. It was no wonder he would suffer the consequences when he chased after Fang Yuan under such conditions. He Lu Lan helplessly gave up. If he still persisted in chasing, it would definitely make Fang Yuan suspicious. And if Fang Yuan guessed the goo was He Lu Lan's vital goo, the situation would turn even worse. I can only rely on my connection to my vital goo and slowly get near him while dodging the formless hands. Then I will ambush this damn thief. He Lulan gritted his teeth till they made cracking noises, while thinking of all kinds of schemes. Formless hands could seize goo worms, but could not refine them. Once the formless hand was broken apart, the goo worm would be released, upon which the goo master would be able to immediately sense the goo and use his will to recall them. Fang Yuan forcibly suppressed He Lulan's vital goo, but had no time or energy to spare to refine it. Thus, He Lulan still had connection with the goo worm, and had hope of turning the situation around. Time passed, the formless hands had completely gained control of the situation in True Inheritance' secluded domain. Giant light blue hands could be seen everywhere, like swarms of bees hovering around. Be it goo masters or True Inheritance light lumps, they only had the choice of escaping. Spring, autumn, cicada. Fang Yuan's mouth was dry as the pressure in him continued to increase. Following the growth of the immortal aperture, spring-autumn cicada continued to absorb the water of the river of time, causing the pressure in the first aperture to continue to increase. There were already many cracks on the first aperture's walls. To decrease the pressure on the first aperture as much as possible, Fang Yuan had already emptied out all the primeval essence in the aperture. He flew rapidly, using tens of movement goo, which had huge demand towards primeval essence. Fortunately, I had already planned and prepared long before this, and bought large numbers of beggar moss. But even so, I need to pay attention to my primeval essence. The consequences will be unimaginable if my primeval essence is completely exhausted. These beggar moths were goo worms used to store primeval essence. They looked like moths, but their wings had round holes. These holes made the beggar moth look tattered, resembling a beggar's clothing. In truth, however, the more holes there were on the beggar moth's wings, the better. More holes meant the beggar moths could store higher-ranked primeval essence. In the mortal world, these beggar moths were limited in supply, but Fang Yuan possessed Hu Immortal Blessed Land and was able to buy groups of beggar moths in Treasure Yellow Heaven. Fang Yuan directly purchased a group. Although there were not many rank 5 and rank 4 beggar moths, rank 3 and rank 2 were huge in numbers. Fang Yuan had close to 1,000 beggar moths and had brought almost all of them with him. Mortals could not buy them and would also find it hard to bear the expenses of raising goo. But Fang Yuan had a Goo Immortal's assets in Hu Immortal Blessed Land, and it was easy for him to raise them. Not only beggar moths, he also had a lot of spare Eagle Rise goo and other goo. Fang Yuan would keep his Eagle Rise goo after using them for a certain time and activate another Eagle Rise goo. There were 6 wings on his back, and it looked like he was using 3 Eagle Rise goo, but in truth he was using more than a dozen Eagle Rise goo in turns. This was because of the heaven and earth chi. Using goo worms under this situation would be met with the backlash from heaven and earth chi. The goo might even perish if they were used for too long. Fang Yuan's immortal aperture was growing. As such, he was the center of the gathering heaven and earth chi, causing the backlash force on him to be very high. Thus, by alternating the use of goo-like Eagle Rise goo, he could prolong their duration to the greatest limit. It was again thanks to having Hu Immortal Blessed Land, having the help of a Goo Immortal resources, that he could be such extravagant. The backlash of heaven and earth chi was also one of the barriers for a Goo Master to advance to Goo Immortal. When Tai Bai Yunsheng faced the tribulations in his ascension, his goo worms perished in large numbers. If not for Fang Yuan's support, he would already have no more goo worms to use after using them all up and facing chaotic lightning balls outside 88 True Yang building. If a Goo Master was lucky enough to advance to a Goo Immortal, all their mortal goo would normally be destroyed. Advancing to a Goo Immortal was extremely risky, and there was a high price to be paid. In lots of cases, a newly advanced Goo Immortal would have nothing on him. Almost all the goo worms they accumulated before would be completely used up. 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King? Fang Yuan suddenly turned into heavenly zombie form while flying and evading. His 6 wings soared, and he raised his 8 arms. Bam! The next moment, he directly clashed against a formless fist. Fang Yuan did not feel any pain, and directly shattered the formless fist, obtaining a goberi. Fang Yuan was overjoyed when he saw the goo. This was the third wild immortal goo he had obtained after exiting Tai Bai Yunsheng's immortal aperture. He was unable to examine it closely, but he stored it in his pocket after suppressing it. Right now, he had the internal danger of spring-autumn cicada while on the outside. There was the formless hand disaster. He had to concentrate completely on flying, as well as pay attention to his primeval essence and the condition of his goo worms. But he could not deny his plentiful harvests. Fang Yan was deeply realizing what was called the coexistence of pain and joy. His flying master attainment was a great help to him in this situation. "Where is Ma Hongyun?" Fang Yuan stored the third immortal goo and looked around him with insatiable greed. Luck Path, supreme true inheritance, had all along been of extreme interest to him. Back then, Giant Sun Immortal Venerable had, to a large extent, relied on this to dominate the lands and become invincible in the world. Previously, Fang Yuan had no way to do anything about this Luck Path true inheritance, but now borrowing the strength of formless hands, he could seize the Luck Path goo worms. This was an extremely rare opportunity. However, even after searching all over whenever he had the chance, he did not see even the shadow of the Luck Path true inheritance. Clearly, Luck Path true inheritance was also moving around. The supreme true inheritance might be protecting Ma Hongyun and Zhao Lianyun, but it was only an acknowledgement of fortune rivaling heaven, and it was still being controlled by a wild will. It was an instinct for wild goo worms to dodge heavenly tribulation and earthly calamity. It was a scene of chaos in the large true inheritance secluded domain. There were formless hands everywhere, true inheritance meteors, fleeing goo masters, or dazzling attacks towards the clenched, formless fists. All these were obstructing Fang Yuan's vision. Fang Yuan also had to evade the formless hands and could not casually search. Both sides were on the move. Thus, it was actually normal for them to not bump into each other. Crack, crack! The sound of something cracking, like the cracking of an eggshell, started to spread. The cracks in true inheritance secluded domain were enlarging. It was only at one side first, but now the cracks had gradually spread to cover all sides. More and more giant light blue hands squeezed in through the cracks. Time passed, the losses to Fang Yuan's goo worms were also becoming more severe. On one hand, because of the backlash from heaven and earth chi, especially the movement goo worms, even after being used in turn, they had reached the limit and many perished. On the other hand, the quantity of formless hands had surpassed the point of qualitative change. Sometimes many formless hands would appear together and block all escape paths. Fang Yan was thus grabbed 2-3 times. But every time he was grabbed, he would intentionally choose the formless hand with less fingers, prioritizing his safety and letting his goo worm be taken of his own accord.